Hello and welcome to WJTS in.form. We are always excited when Jan Dougan joins us in the studio to talk about, well, who knows? And today we're going to talk about squash. Jan is the Extension Health Educator with the Du Bois County Purdue Extension Office. And Jan, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Before we start, I want to say congratulations on being one of the nominees for the Athena Award. I think you were very deserving. A great selection of women, but it's good to see your name on that list.
Well, thank you. I was honored and humbled to be part of that group of outstanding women who are contributing in so many ways to our community and our communities here in Du Bois County, and it was just an honor to be selected to be a part of that group.
I was glad to see you on the list.
Thank you.
Okay, let's talk about squash.
All right, let's do that. So I brought some today to show all of our viewers some different options for squash, because sometimes we think, you know, that they're limited, but today, whether you grow them in your garden or whether you purchase them at the grocery store or even better yet, the farmer's market, there's a lot of different varieties that are available. So we're going to start out with a quiz for Mr. Bill. How's that?
I'm ready.
All right.
What's the quiz?
So what do you think this one is called, Bill?
Squash.
Very good. This is a squash.
Yellow squash.
This is a squash. It's not a yellow squash. It's called a spaghetti squash.
The inside's kind of stringy.
Yes, it is. So have you had it?
I have had it.
Okay. So when you prepare this squash, to prepare it, you would want to cut the stem end off. Well, first of all, selecting a nice squash, you want to get one that's not bruised and that has a smooth, hard skin. You want a woody stem on it. And then when you go to prepare it, the first thing you need to do is wash it and use a brush on it to wash it. So we want to scrub and we want to wash that squash under cool running water to get rid of any dirt or anything, because there might be pathogens in that dirt, and we want to remove those from whether it came from our garden or whether it came from the farmer's market or the grocery store. We want to remove any dirt or any pathogens before we prepare it. So that's the first step. I find it easiest to actually cut the stem end off, use a really nice sharp chef knife, cut the stem end off. Then you can set because you'll have a flat edge, you can set the squash upright on a flat edge, and you can hold it and you can slice right down through the squash horizontally. And then you open it, and inside you'll find seeds and maybe some stringy membrane that you want to remove from this squash. And then probably for doing spaghetti squash, one of my favorite ways to do it, which I just did the other evening, was after I cleaned it and after I halved it, then I rubbed a little olive oil on the inside. I have taken the seeds and the membrane out, rubbed a little olive oil, little salt and pepper. Then I placed it on a parchment paper. It's for easy cleanup for me. On a cookie sheet in the oven, and at 350, I think I probably did it for almost an hour. You can tell when your squash is done roasting if you can take a fork and pierce the skin of the squash, and it easily pierces the skin from the outside, then it's done. And it'll be a nice golden brown and really delicious. So then a spaghetti squash, after it cools for maybe 5 minutes, you'll want to take a fork and you'll want to string the membrane that's inside, and you'll have spaghetti-like, fine spaghetti-like squash that you can use. You can use that, just put a little butter on it, a little brown sugar, a little cinnamon. You can eat it that way. That would be a sweet. If you want it savory, put a little butter on it, put any kind of herbs you have or that you like. You can even mix. You can use it for spaghetti, and you can put spaghetti topping on it. So there's a number of ways that you could do this spaghetti squash.
Then you get your vegetables that way.
Yes, and we are all about trying to get more vegetables.
You're all about trying to get more vegetables on your plate.
Do you realize, Bill, that only 1 in 5 Hoosiers get their supply of vegetables every day?
I would say I am surprised, but not really, because I see how I eat and how others eat.
Right. Yeah. It's a challenge. It's something that we need to focus on, and I want to try to encourage that. And so knowing more about the different vegetable choices, I I think helps people to, you know, think about it and maybe get more vegetables.
Well, you know, when I go through a farmer's market or I go through the grocery store produce aisle, I go right by the squash because I don't really know what to do. But what you're saying is so easy to cook. It's hardly takes anything.
That's right. It just takes a little bit of planning, having it and doing it. So what's this one, Bill?
That is a butternut squash.
That one I knew. This is a butternut squash. This is usually available in our area from September through December, actually pretty much year-round in the grocery stores, but locally, September through December. You could probably store this for several weeks at home, so if you purchase some now at the farmer's market, you could store them a little bit longer in a cool, dry place. Again, you want to look for a woody stem, which mine broke off, and you want to look for clear, you know, non-bruised, hard outside to know that it's done. The heavier the squash, the more meat, even though it's not meat, we use that term.
Sure, sure.
The heavier, the more squash that's inside. And the same with the butternut squash as with the spaghetti squash. If you slice that stem end off, or if you slice this other end off, or both ends, you can set it up right. And this is really hard, tough skin, so you have to have a really sharp knife to cut down through that and cut it horizontally, take the seeds and membranes out, and then again roast it, put a little olive oil on it, little salt and pepper on it, roast it in a 350-degree oven until it's the skin is fork tender, and you will have a wonderful squash to enjoy. And you can just scoop that squash out and use it. If you would prefer, you can slice it lengthwise and then slice it into sections. Take that skin off by using a vegetable peeler to peel the skin off, and then chop it into like 1-inch cubes. And you can toss it in some olive oil or some canola oil. We want to use a heart-healthy oil, and then roast it. It'll roast a lot quicker if you do it that way. But wonderful, probably one of my favorite squashes. I love the flavor of butternut squash.
Why are we using oil on it? Why are we putting olive oil or canola
Well,
oil
actually, that's going to help brown it.
Okay.
Help keep the juices inside, so it's more moist.
Okay.
Yeah, give it a good flavor. Lots of reasons.
Now, is there a size that you should get, or is this a good size?
This is probably
These seem small to me, but is that
this
just me?
This is probably a little bit on the small size, but you know, for a family of 2 or 4, this would be a nice size to roast.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So that's another squash I have here. What about this one?
That's an acorn squash.
Yes, this is an acorn squash. So again, you want to look for a woody stem end. You want to look for a clean or a non-bruised skin. You want it to be a little hard. I don't know if you can hear that on the microphone. And this one you want to definitely scrub with a brush and get in between those little edges that we have here to get it clean before you cut it. And again, the same technique that we used on the spaghetti squash and the butternut squash, you can use on the acorn squash. You can cut it in half, clean out the seeds in the membrane, roast in a 350-degree oven. It's going to take at least 30 minutes, maybe 45, maybe as much as an hour, depending.
Depends on the size.
Yeah,
okay.
Depends on the size. You could also microwave any of these, but I like the flavor that I get better when I do it in the oven. But if you need it quick and easy, or if you're going to be scooping it out and mashing it and using it in another way, then microwave is just fine.
Could you put them on a grill?
I've never done that. I would, if I did that on the grill, I would definitely probably cut it into cubes to do it. But I mean, I would think you could easily do that because the grill is just like an oven in that you can maintain that temperature and do the roasting there. This might be one that most of our viewers have not seen or are not familiar with.
It's a squash. That's all I know.
It is a squash. You're absolutely right. It's usually it has the yellow and the green streaks in it. It's usually long like this. It is definitely one, again, that we're going to have to use the brush to get that. See, I even have some of my garden dirt on there. Get that garden dirt off with cool running water before we slice it. This is called a delicate squash.
Okay.
It's fairly new for most of us in this area, although it's a squash that's been around for a while. I was first introduced to this squash last year from a farmer's market out east, and I've noticed that it's available around here now, and I actually grew this one in our garden. So again, you want to look for a woody stem and a hard outside when you go to pick it. This tastes very much like the butternut squash, only a little bit sweeter.
Okay.
And what I like to do with this is simply slice it into slices, leaving the skin on, and then taking a knife and taking that seed out of there and just roast the rings. Or if you want to do moons, cut it in half,
Okay.
scoop it out, slice it, and roast your moons. Because the skin is not quite as hard as the other ones. You can actually eat the skin.
That's what I was going to ask.
roasting.
Do you eat the skin off of these, or generally you're kind of scooping it out?
I don't, because for me it's too hard and
Okay.
too chewy and too tough. But this one is a smoother skin, not as tough, and I can eat the skin.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have 4 different kinds of squash, and there's many other kinds of squash.
Yes, there's a lot of them that will be available during the fall. Pumpkin is in that category. So, your pumpkins, you can bake the same way if you want to use that pumpkin pulp in there, taking the seeds and the strings out. And usually the smaller pumpkins, the pie pumpkins, are really good to roast and then use that pumpkin for meals or however you want to use it.
And then you just basically season it and just eat it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Could you make a mashed squash to eat, like a mashed potato?
Sure. Sure, you could mash the squash. It could be like a mashed potato. Yeah, butternut works really well like that.
And then it counts towards your vegetable count on
That's
your plate.
right.
Half the plate should be vegetables.
That's right. And what color would these squash be?
When they're done, when they're
Yeah.
cooked, pale yellow.
Yellow and orange. We have yellow and orange. And we really need to try to at least choose an orange vegetable once every week. So
Okay.
try to incorporate that color into your meal planning at least once a week. Even more if you can, try to pick an orange vegetable.
Okay, so and pumpkin would count toward. Does pumpkin
Yes.
pie count?
Pumpkin pie counts as a vegetable.
Ooh, I can eat pumpkin pie.
I count it as a vegetable. In moderation, Bill.
Okay,
We always
everything
talk
is-
about moderation.
Everything is moderation, because there is a
Right.
lot of sugar and cream and things like that.
That's
in
right.
a pumpkin pie.
That's right.
But you can make these by doing, you can mix this with anything you'd like, any kind of seasoning. You can make it so it's more of a spicy. Probably could put a little curry if you'd like in it, or you
Sure.
can make it more of a desserty, sugary kind of a flavor.
Sure. Pumpkin and curry goes really well together.
I mean, I've never thought about those two together.
Yeah.
To try that.
So if you have mashed pumpkin, or pumpkin is also available in cans. You can purchase pumpkin in cans. So if you have pumpkin puree, whether you've made it yourself by baking your pumpkin in the oven and then cutting it out and then pureeing it, or if you buy purchased canned pumpkin, that's a great substitute for in recipes. So you could even take canned pumpkin and you can add it to like a spice cake mix, and then add your eggs that the recipe calls for, and you can make a spice cake that's really tasty, and you've added vegetable to the cake.
Yeah. Well, squash. It was something I've always not really thought of eating. Walked right by it at a store. Now I'll have to start putting squash into my diet.
You'll have to try some.
All right.
And the beauty of like spaghetti squash is you can even eat it cold. It's really delicious cold too. So, hot or cold, very different ways that you can prepare these. Excellent sources of the phytochemicals that we need to help protect our body and keep us healthy. And that's what it's all about, trying to make healthier food choices so that we stay healthy and that we feel good.
Well, I think one thing you pointed out too is squash is easy to
It
prepare.
is easy.
It really is.
Yeah.
Jan, thank you very much for being our guest.
Well, thank you.
Add squash to your diet, according to Jan Dougan, the Extension Educator with the Du Bois County Purdue Extension Office. This has been WJTS in.form. Thank you for watching. We are local people watching local people.